Good morning, and thank you for attending this first webinar. What we're going to be running through is a quick introduction to the WoMaster product portfolio, some information around how the IT/OT landscape is looking, some of the questions which I get asked quite frequently, and then sort of a quick rundown on some of the new hot products and some of the new innovations that are coming out. Just to give a feel of where sort of WoMaster is kind of sitting in that in the industrial IT space. Okay. So to kick off, the WoMaster group is really quite large actually. So they've got various offices around the world. So their main headquarters is in Taiwan, but they also have offices in China, Europe. So they've got office in Spain, and they've also got sub-regional distributors like ourselves, which are in UK, France, and UAE. One of the key things I think which I always sort of like to point out when discussing how the WoMaster group is kind of sat is the fact that they actually manufacture the products themselves. For a lot of people, they think this is very standard, but I've been around the industry for quite a few years now, more than I care to remember. And one of the things is a lot of the time they'll be getting printed circuit boards in from China or Taiwan predominantly, and they'll just be assembling them, and then they'll put a stamp on them saying made in the US, whereas all the actual components are all shipped in various boxes from around the world. One of the nice things about the sort of WoMaster brand is they actually manufacture the boards themselves. As you can see here, they've got all of the actual machines to physically make the printed circuit boards up from everything, which means that they have 100% control over all of the quality, process control, and also it allows them to be able to then do OEM products if the situation arises very easily, because they can make a design change and then push that through straight away. So one of the key things that is kind of key I think around the IT, OT space, the IoT space, is the way that the vertical focuses are looking. So, for example, within WoMaster, there's probably generally about 5 key areas where the product families kind of sit and will play extremely well. So one is utilities, whether that's renewable or traditional. You've then also got transportation, whether that's road, rail. They're very strong marketplaces. You've got factory automation, process control, um, security surveillance. This is sort of like physical security surveillance, as in while they don't do much in the way of cameras themselves, there are masses of camera manufacturers out there, but then all those cameras need to be connected to something. And one of the key things is the PoE for them, which I'll go through later on, highlighting various products as well and how they can support that. And then, of course, there's the new one, which is all around the smart cities. So that's really come around in the last few years, but it's probably one of these topics where you could spend 2 years talking about it and not have the same concept of what smart cities are. Everyone's concept is going to be different, but you know, it's one of those ones where there's a solution in there, and we offer several different pieces of the solution. So it is something that we are able to talk about and offer. Very sort of high level introduction to the portfolio. WoMaster had created a broad spectrum. So what you would traditionally expect on the bottom is the layer 2, layer 3, PoE, managed switches, the sort of bread and butter of the network. You've got high port density 19-inch rack mount, you've got small DIN rail, and then got M12 options for onboard the transportation, or also very dirty factory floors, you know, whatever the situation may arise. So there is that switching aspect. Then what you've got is then more of a field switches. So these are a bit smaller. Usually you've got traditional Ethernet switches, a couple of media converters, but mostly nowadays, I don't really see much in the way of media converter requests. Normally we're talking minimum is a low-end device is a switch. There's just a very few examples where they need a media converter, but more and more it's around the sort of LTE routers, the actual sensors as well. So some interesting news coming this year. WoMaster will actually be offering sale of various end sensors, so that if you have applications, what you can do is you can actually get all of your switching infrastructure, do all the connectivity, and also we can help supply sensors as well. So if it's a general overall solution you're looking for, we can actually help out on that. I think where the key focus around the WoMaster product line sits is that IIoT gateway and compute space. So what you've got is you've got a lot in the way of wireless and cellular routing. I go into some of the new products a bit later on, which are all around that space. Core sort of switching, and then you've also got edge compute platforms. This really is where a lot of people are kind of focusing. They're using the layer 2, layer 3 standard switching, where they have to just connect everything, but where they're kind of like making that design choice, where they're sort of like looking for new ways to innovate and come up with new application solutions, is around that sort of like routing, edge compute platforms. As always, as with everyone else, what they've done is they've actually come up with a really nice cloud platform. So you can either have fully cloud-based, or you can actually have local server-based. I've got a couple of slides later on in the presentation which deep dives into that a bit more. So you know, this just gives a really nice overview of where the sort of WoMaster product set kind of sits. Little more detail around how that is kind of broken down. I mentioned some of the IoT sensors. We've got just a small selection here, but this is more around the smart city boxes. I kind of mentioned that smart city space. Sorry. So we have dedicated smart city solutions which interconnect everything from the sensors through to the connectivity and then into the cloud managed platforms. So there is a whole solution-based offering within the WoMaster product that is able to, be able to offer roadside cameras, CO2 sensors, temperature, rain, and then sort of be able to push that back or whatever it is needed in a one-stop shop box with all the sensors, and then a citywide management monitoring platforms. So I kind of mentioned a bit earlier, there's this wider discussion that kind of goes on around IT and OT. So my background is I predominantly worked within the OT space, the industrial networking space for well over 15 years. I'm not exactly sure how many years it is now, but I actually did a quick transition for the last 4 into the IT space. So I've been working within the IT switching and routing wireless space for the last 4 years, and it's been very interesting to see how they differ, how they are kind of merging and working together, or pushing against each other in some cases. So what I wanted to do is just run through and just give some sort of thoughts and insights of what I've seen within this IT versus OT discussion, because it's one I have quite frequently with lots of people from varying degrees. So these conversations happening on the IT side as well. So one of the things is the line between the IT and the industrial are merging together. With IoT, I mean, if you just type in IoT, you get everyone start talking about it. You've got the big boys like the traditional IT guys like Cisco. They're making big plays into the IoT space, which is then also encompassing that traditional OT sort of sector. But then they're also looking at it from a very IT-centric side as well. The IT teams are being asked to support and maintain much more of the OT infrastructure. I've met several people who have been sat on the IT side of the desk who've then been asked, okay, previously it was all run by our factory foreman and he made all of the decisions on the network, but now can you just make sure that what he's specifying, what he's putting in, and what he wants to use is actually compatible with what we have? Can you kind of like envelop it in what we're doing for our GDPR or whatever it is on the IT side? So there is this much wider discussion going on rather than, okay, the plant foreman, he does his in his network, and we've got our IT guys that run our traditional phones and servers and everything else. So there is much more, cross discussion, and this is coming right from the sort of board level down. As mentioned, the IT companies are making moves into the OT space. They've seen the fact that there's a lot of switching, routing, wireless. All the technologies are kind of being pushed everywhere, and it's when if they have experience of the technology, but I'll come on to it a bit later on. They don't have the experience of it. So a lot of them, they're kind of blundering around, applying IT philosophies to OT requirements. By that is when you have a traditional IT project, it's designed, specified, you go out, it's kind of put together, and then you'll have something to go out and install it. But that design and install piece will be, well, we've got a standard CCNA engineer. He's going to go in, he's going to make some configs, plug it all in, connect it up, and then walk out. When you then start talking about the OT space, it's like, right, okay, has it got certifications to go into the factory? Does he know try to work at maybe heights or, you know, in hot environments, in closed environments, and all that sort of stuff. And they're like, well, no, we've just got, you know, turn up in a van, they have a two-step ladder, and they screw it to a wall. You know, it's things like that that you know, is very common. Plus, also the philosophy of how it is being asked. OT companies as well are being also asked to cover some of the IT features and services. So they're like, okay, great, you know, you're doing all of our factory floor and everything else. Can you just extend it into this sub office, which would normally be a traditional IT thing? Okay, yeah, we can do, but you know, of protocols, what they're actually expecting, who's going to maintain it, who's going to monitor it, you know, who's going to be running backups and all this sort of stuff on, and you know, those sorts of things. So there is definitely a big shift going on within the marketplace. So I put this together because this was kind of some of the key areas that I've seen, and I called it the eternal dilemma. If you look at it from the different angles, so IT solution, so when somebody comes along and says, all right, okay, what's the latest solution? They're looking at pioneering technology, breaking all the known records, speed, you know, throughputs, you know, whatever it is. And the OT guys are kind of going, well, we want kind of an established technology. We want something that's kind of been proven to keep working. IT side, latest, greatest, fastest. You know, if something new comes out, you know, they want it straight away. Whereas it's that tried, tested, and reliable. A lot of this comes down to just today. You know, we had to do a network reset in the office, and it's like, okay, but then that means all our systems are down for 15 minutes. You know, everything reboots and everything else. That's fine. It's an IT office. Yeah, we might lose emails for a couple of minutes, but we'll probably pick them up on our email, on our mobiles, and all this sort of stuff. It's no big thing. But then if you turn around to a factory floor that's moving heavy, hot, or dangerous materials around, which are being controlled by the network, and turn around to them and say, okay, we're just going to lose where everything is for 15 minutes, they'll be like, well, we're going to have to shut the production floor. Shutting it down takes us half an hour, and then starting it up could take us half an hour. So a 15-minute downtime in the IT world could be an hour and a half downtime in the OT world with longer consequences. So it's that thing of, you know, everyone, you know, needs to have their key attributes taken into account. IT side, yeah, you know, you can throw in some proprietary software, hardware, you know, well, you know, we'll go for a single vendor solution that'll run all of it. A lot of larger OT solutions which I've been involved in, there's been multi-vendor. There's a lot of multi-vendor. Each new plant expansion or things like that, there'll be maybe a new vendor, new service that they've been looking for. So you can get sort of like a bit of vendor confetti. You know, you can turn up and they'll all of the industrial vendors in various cabinets around the factory floor, and they've all got to work to the try tested and reliable solution. The IT industry, yeah, the scales of projects and the way that they look at them are defined differently. Some IT projects, you know, they're absolutely phenomenal. You can get extremely large OT projects as well, but the way that they're looked at and the way that they're kind of like delivered, large IT projects, you know, it's still, you know, they'll be installing into generally established locations. It's server rooms, it's, you know, cabinets, it's you know, all the usual places. A lot of very large OT projects, they'll be building physical infrastructure to go with it. So they'll be building power stations, they'll be building substations, they'll be building wind farms and wind turbines, which, you know, that can be a 15, 20-year project that's happening, whereas the IT one will be a couple of years maybe for an absolutely massive one. And then, of course, we've got this software solution driven. So now one of the big things that's coming out, if you look at the sort of networking space in general, you've got a lot of software solutions. It's all about how the software is linking it all together, how your visibility is being able to maintain and monitor and everything, and add even more features into your network through the software. While there is a need, a requirement, and people are looking for software solutions in the industrial world, they still want to keep that philosophy of the simple, easy to maintain. They used to, if everything's good, there's a green LED, and they just look at it and go, right, okay, we've got a green LED, we're good. If it changes color, then we panic. But they want some more of the features, but it's that longer, it's that longer cycle that comes with it. So hopefully that was a bit of insight into where I see the sort of IT/OT space. So what I've got now is just some new product highlights, some of the key things that have come out of WoMaster, and then I'll just kind of be running through some of the more product-centric discussions. And if you have any questions, please drop me a line. Please pop it into the questions panel, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Apologies, I forgot to mention that earlier. I think one of the key things is WoMaster have just released, this release was just before Christmas, so timing hasn't been probably the absolute most fantastic for getting the message out, but for having a brand new, amazing product for the very start of 2020, it's amazing. So it's a very small self-healing mesh wireless access point and router. So when I first sort of started with the WoMaster kit, I couldn't actually believe how physically small they were getting some of this kit. You'd read the product specs and I'm expecting some sort of absolute massive hefty box, and then you pull it out and it's a tiny, small, enclosed, very rugged, all metal, amazing box, but the sheer footprint is amazing. And the amount of technology they're being able to squeeze inside it is amazing. So what this does, I've got a couple of slides a bit later on, which actually goes more into that, mesh AP routing technology that they use. But they're all the 2.4, 5 gigahertz, dual gig, wireless LAN, and you've even got some routing thrown in there as well. You've got security, so you've got the OpenVPN IPsec, and also the rugged temperatures. I've already been having several discussions around these products with various people, and also you've got PoE thrown in on top of that as well. You can either do it a low voltage DC in, or you can then do it via PoE as well. So the options are amazing. All of the new Wi-Fi standards, with the exception of 802.11x, but I can run through that later, but they're all AC, which is the very established one. AX hasn't formally been ratified yet. They're still sort of like talking about that. So for all of the true, tried and tested wireless standards, this is absolutely up there with the best of them. So that's more of the indoor one, but then what you also have is an outdoor long distance version. So this is able to then participate and maintain that same network, but what you can do is you can then stretch it to kilometers if you want to. So the technology inside it is essentially exactly the same as the previous model, but what they've done is they've just been able to expand it out and do it so that you can do some very long reach applications. So here we have a nice little mix where, as you can see here, you've got a long reach link here on the left between 1 and 10 kilometers. Of course, any distances in wireless is all entirely dependent on actually testing what's in the way. If you have 10 kilometers but you've got sky-rise buildings all the way in between it, you're not going to get 10 kilometers. So it all depends on the actual line of sight and trees and all sorts of things. As with anything with the distance on wireless site survey is a must. because there's always something that you've never probably realized would affect a wireless signal that can run across it. But what you can do here is you can just completely mix and match. You can completely throw in. So what we have here is these CAP units. They're a central access point. So these are where it kind of links out into the wider world. And then what you've got is you've got these range extenders. So one nice little example is these being used. So the smaller ones, the little black unit up here, is they're mounted on to forklift trucks. And so as they drive around the factories, what they're doing is they're constantly roaming, meshing to get the best connection to be able to then pass data and do all of the throughput that they need. So that's a really great application story that's been deployed with these. So some of the key features, so you've got mesh mode, so fast roaming clients. I've got a quick example of how easy it is to set up on these, which kind of links back to before, in that one of the key things is ease of setup and maintenance. It's great having new features, but then if it takes you 25 minutes and 10 minutes of hammering on a keyboard, not the best to set up. But what you've got is a really nice, simple interface, easy configuration. They've got full management, so whether that's web GUI, CLI, Telnet, all the usual things. SSH secure, so that's a big one as well. All of the WoMaster kit is looking at the SSH to make sure that you've then got the security. You've got actual WoMaster tools, which I cover off a bit later on in the end, and also you've then also got the MIB if you're going to be doing for your SNMP protocols. So security-wise, 802.1x, so it can be used with Radius, TACX Radius servers, HTTP, SSH, all of the usual things. On the wireless LAN side, you've got WPA2 with the pre-share key, all the ones that are absolutely standard for securing your wireless networks nowadays. And then you've got the TACX Plus as well, which you can throw on as well. You've also got a routing option as well, so you can either have them very set up as a very basic wireless mesh, or what you can do is you can then start to do some more in-depth things where you can then have different routes. So it is static routes, but just being able to have a routing option on a wireless access point is amazing. So you've got little NAT in there as well, full featured. I've not seen all of these sorts of features kind of thrown in on so many of the various devices, which is a great one. So what's nice is so the WA512G, which is the newer product, so that's the ones that I've been talking about here. Their throughput, so their CPUs have all been upgraded, so it's a core hardware investment that's been done on these, and what it allows you to do is really sort of demonstrate that the performance, even when running things like IPsec, NAT, and actual routing over them, the throughputs are absolutely amazing. So you can pretty much do anything, any application that you can think of, you can still actually run them. A lot of times where people start talking about, oh look, we've got a full featured device, it can do all of these features. As you start turning them all on, the throughputs that you can achieve start going down and down and down. So one of the things that they've been doing is they've been doing it so that you've got enough of the hardware to be able to then actually push through, still maintain the performance you need with all of the features that you want to turn on. So I kind of mentioned the ease of configuration. So this is it. I've personally not configured them yet, but I've seen it demonstrated, and you just log into the unit and you just simply click whether you want it meshed, whether they're the root AP or their extender, and you just put in an SSID, and then you've got your pre-share key, which is all probably pre-set up with the wireless, the initial wireless setup, and that's it. It's as simple as that. So you can have multiple meshes working within nearby of each other because it's all done off the SSIDs. So that's another simplistic, easy configuration through the web interface that gets you, amazing feature and functionality, but you don't have to spend 25 minutes on every device banging away on the keyboard or banging your head against the keyboard. I've had experience with that. I've done some installs in the past, and yeah, anything that makes your life easier when on site is an absolute plus. So I kind of touched on it a little earlier that there was that kind of like core band. So we've got the standard routing, standard root products, and a lot of the industrial switching products. But a lot of applications now are all around the cellular routing functionality, cellular routers, all the sort of LTE, Wi-Fi, PoE routing. So what WoMaster have is they have a all-in-one box almost. So it's a cellular router, it's got PoE boost. So if you're not familiar with what PoE boost is, typically most vendor PoE switches, you have to supply it 48 volts in. You supply it 48 volts, and then what it does is it passes that voltage through to the PoE port, so you then have PoE on the output. What WoMaster has is they have the ability to take in just 24 volts and internally within the product, step it up to 48 volts to be able to then offer the standard PoE. So if you've only got 24 volts at site, previously what you'd have to do is you'd have to get like inverters and all this sort of stuff, take that supply, up it to 48 volts, and then plug in your switch, which of course is additional cost, it's additional labor and everything else. Whereas what you can do with the WoMaster kit, depending on make, model, apologies, little asterisk, caveat, is you can just take that 24 volts in and then still have all of the standard PoE out. So depending on make and model, you can then have it so it's PoE plus, standard PoE, so 82.3 AF, which is the 15.4 volts, or you've got the AT, which is the 30 watts per port. You've got a really nice PoE budget. So as you can see here, so this particular unit, it can take from as low as 8 volts and still deliver out PoE. So this is perfect for on vehicle. So if you think about it, cars, buses, we're talking 12, 24 volts, depending on the exact vehicle we're talking about. So you can just directly install them into the electrical circuits of the buses or the trains or whatever it is that you're looking at, and still deliver PoE, which can then power all of your Wi-Fi access points, if you want extra ones, PoE cameras. It all depends on exactly which models and variations you're going with. And then, of course, what you've got is you've got the LTE, so you can actually physically insert SIM cards into various models. So what that allows you to do is then, if there is a breakdown in the Wi-Fi, if it is your actual outside connection, so for buses and things, this could be your main connection out, pop in your SIM card, and then there you go, you have a connected mobile device. The easiest one is buses and the like. But it could be anything. It could be anything moving around. In a mining example, it could be all of the pickup trucks and various other like large objects that move around. You've still got all of the standard security, cybersecurity, so firewall, NAT, all thrown in there as well. But it's just that option of having everything at your fingertips. If you want to use it all, you can. If you want to just pick and choose, you've got it there. So this one, the WR329P, is actually certified for E.M.A.C. So that's a European standard which allows you to go on buses. So I've done a few projects in the past where, they wanted to install on buses, and first thing they say is, okay, has it got its E.M.A.C certification? Absolutely, yes, it has. And it's also got the trackside for rail applications. So the WR322A, I wanted to highlight this one because for such a small unit, you may be able to see just here on the front of it, you've got actual M12 ports. And so for a lot of applications where there is a onboard rail, for example, they will almost always specify that the product has to have M12 connection ports. It's the vibration. If you sit on a train, actually sort of stop and think, you never actually sit perfectly still. Maybe I've never actually been on it, but from the look of it, a bullet train in Japan might be the closest one, which is absolutely perfect. But most normal trains around the world, it's always in motion. There's always some sort of jostling or thing like that. So you need to have these secure connectors so that they don't just keep dropping out. If you do standard RJ45s, after a couple of weeks, there'll just be no connectivity to the ports, and I've seen that in the past. So what you've done is they've actually included all of the secure ports onto a very small, easy fitting unit. So it gives not only the wireless, but also the LTE. One of the key things with this is that, it's small. If you sit in a train carriage, the room you need to put all of this new technology into trains is very small, especially if it's retrofit. Brand new trains are being made with a lot of this technology in it now, but they are also having to squeeze more into the same space. All new trains, especially in the UK, they're being driven out with the message of fit more people in, more people into a physical carriage. That's great, but that means that all the technology that they want to have has to be squeezed into the sides to fit more people in. This is where these sorts of devices can very easily come in. It's still got all of the standards, it's got all of the technology sat in it, and it offers that small space, but it really packs a punch into the sort of rail or onboard bus market. So I just wanted to quickly run the cellular features that you can get on WoMaster. While most products have a nano SIM installation type, so you just unscrew a little panel, a secured little panel, and you can then insert the SIM cards that you want, single, dual SIM, whatever. There is also models going to be coming out which have eSIM, so it's essentially soldered onto the board, and what it will be is, when you're actually looking to purchase them, we can then, make sure that it's set to the right carrier, because every region in the world has different mobile operators and standards and everything else. It's a bit of a world mess, but this eSIM option is going to be coming for various models. And what that does is that just means that right from the get-go, you can have your units ready to go, and it will be, remote SIM provisioning. So you can just install the units and then they'll connect and then drag through all their config and everything else. Data rates are still looking really good. We're not the same as actual wireless or physical cable infrastructure fiber, but if you think about it, here in the UK, we're starting to talk about like 5G and all these sorts of very high throughputs and everything else. So this is something that is going to be the future of it, and they're leading the way with being able to then offer all of the potential solutions that you're after. On the Wi-Fi side, depending on if there's interest, I can do maybe a dedicated Wi-Fi presentation because it's a vast topic in itself, but I just wanted to quickly throw this in here to quickly highlight some of the ways that Wi-Fi is changing. So dual band, everyone's generally heard of dual band 2.45 gigahertz. Quick breakdown, 2.4 is lower throughput but wider area. 5G is higher throughput, smaller area, to, in its most boiled down state. So if you have a large area, say a large factory floor, you would generally look at 2.4 gigahertz because then it will cover much more of the area. But if you want to have very high high throughput, high connectivity, you'll go 5G because then that'll be maybe in a room, which will cover one room with very good signal. But you can mix and match, and it all depends on exactly what you want to be doing. The standard I mentioned, the 802.11ac, that's kind of like the current best. There is a brand new one that's coming out, 11ax, which takes some of these things listed to the next level, and I'm happy to do have a discussion around where that 11ax is sitting, how it can be used optimally, and all this sort of stuff. But there's a couple of figures there, but I think the main takeaway from this is the throughputs over N versus AC. So N was one of the very first, so it was ABGN, so N was quite a few years ago, but it's still it feels an old technology now. But the throughputs are massively increased with the new AC, and pretty much all of the models that are coming out of WoMaster have the new AC protocol on them. Once again, little caveat, I don't know every single model number off the top of my head that does or may not have it, but all the ones that I generally look at on a day-to-day basis do have it. So, it's just that, huge increase, 1 gig over wireless, amazing, to think that you can get that. Previously, it was all just done on a copper or fiber cable if you wanted those throughputs. Quick highlight of some of the actual Ethernet switches. I just wanted to throw these in to just say, hey, yep, if you're after a traditional Ethernet rugged switch that can fit into whatever application you're looking at, absolutely. Port counts, fiber, we've got it all. Larger, smaller, however you want it fitting into your network. There is a solution from WoMaster, and also there is the larger railway MP series, which is more typical of what you would see going on board trains for a full fleet upgrade. So these units have been used to do large fleet upgrades all around the world, and they've got all of the features that you would expect to see, like link bypass. So what that means is if you're connecting, if you think of train carriages, you don't know the order of train carriages before you assemble the train in the morning. You know there's an engine and you have carriages, but you don't know the order they're going to be in. They all kind of like get mixed up, and they'll say one day we're going to have 5 carriages, the next day we're going to have 7. They need to kind of run in series rather than a loop to do redundancy. But the problem is if a train carriage loses power, or if there is an issue on board, which is quite often. Train power is probably one of the worst for very low and very high changes in voltage very quickly. That's why a lot of times you're on a train and you'll see the lights flickering and all this sort of stuff. That's the voltage is just swinging wildly, and everything is kind of tripping on and off, and it's an awful environment for anything electrical. But what these do is, if you connect these 2 ports together here, on the slightly smaller unit on the right hand side of it next to the I think it does say USB or comms port there. What they do is, even if there is no power to the unit, there is a connection through. So you can still have data flowing even if you lose power to this unit. So it's called bypass. So it's data bypass. Very, very handy. Everyone who generally does trains is looking for these features to make sure that they are able to be used going forward. So I kind of mentioned a bit earlier around the error management suite. So one of the things that the IT industry is really pushing is big software suites, software management platforms and everything else. So what's nice is WoMaster have also invested and developed a whole suite of what they refer to as ThingsMaster. It's a software platform. So what it does is it can do all of your devices. It can then also do monitoring. It can show you video cameras. So it's a one-stop application management monitoring system. So here, for example, the one on the left, the ThingsMaster, what you've got is you can have live cameras showing things. You've got all the status of your devices, how much traffic, if there's any sensors, what those sensors are reading out and everything else. So it offers this one-stop shop of, connect everything together, and then what you can do is you can then monitor your entire network through the whole system. So it's not only going to be keeping tabs on your network infrastructure, but you can actually use it to monitor your actual application as well. So that is more of a overall system. So what you've got is ThingsMaster OTA, so that's over the air. So this is more of a remote. So this can be hosted in AWS, Azure, Microsoft, all of those ones. You can do all your design. So for here, for example, what we've got is bus tracking. So we'll have one of the buses with the WA 322 boxes on with its 3G LTE signals going on with its Wi-Fi and everything, and as it then makes its route around the city, you'll be able to actually see the bus sort of real time going where around its merry route. One of the key things that a lot of fleet management are after is the fact that what you can do is you can do it so you can specify that if it goes off route, it alerts you. So if all of a sudden the bus turns and starts going in a completely different direction, it will then kind of ping you and say, bus number 74 has now taken the wrong road and is heading off in completely the wrong direction with all the passengers. What you can do is you can then ring them up and say, hey, what's going on? What's up? And they might be, typical. There's a crash. Police have redirected me around, and I'll be, taking this this new route, and it'll be like, okay, great, away we go. So that's the sort of larger sort of fleet management option. What's great about it is you've then got behind it the actual cloud platform itself. You've got things like device tracking, asset management, flexible GUIs, programmable. So one of the nice little examples is we've seen is being able to turn on and off street lights. So a lot of the higher WoMaster products, they're able to have some smart logic in them. So they call it like, fog computing, edge computing, whatever you want to kind of like run through that. And it's able to make decisions. Because one of the key things is nowadays, the way that people want to manage and maintain their networks, they want decisions quickly, because the quicker you can make a decision, the better the outcome you can have. But if you look at a lot of traditional networks, what you have is an event happens, the network passes it all the way up to the very top platform, someone looks at it and goes, oh, that's not very good, we'll need to close a connection, we'll need to enable something. You know, it's a very simple, immediate fix they do. Gets pushed all the way back down through the network, and that, depending on the network and who it is, what systems you're running, that can take a lot of time. And meanwhile, you know, there can be problems growing and growing and growing. So what they're able to do with the idea of the edge compute, or fog computing, whichever way you want to call it, is the actual end device that's connected to it. You can tell it, if in this scenario, make this decision. If you start seeing a gauge, a pressure gauge, start increasing past the point, shut the valve off and now let us know. So by the time the guys at the operation room see the fact that, oh, valve number 7, its pressure's skyrocketing, before they would have to then send back, close the valve, but now it's already done. So, you know, it's, you know, the potential for it, you know, these are very simple ones, but as it's adopted more, as it grows out, the potential and opportunity just goes on and on and on. It's amazing. So I kind of mentioned the WoMaster. This is a very nice little tool. If you've got WoMaster in your production line, what you can do is you can easily fire up a quick app, quick program. It's not on a phone. You can fire up a quick program, and what it does is it'll just quickly search out and identify all of the WoMaster products on your network. Having been on site, working on installation, maintenance, troubleshooting, something like this is absolutely valuable. You know, having to run around and try and work out everything's IP address and how to connect to it, and if they're all on the same firmware versions, you know, this is an absolute indispensable lifesaver. So nice little tool. It's, you know, free to download, you know, free to use, but just little things that they've actually been throwing into the WoMaster product portfolio. Right then, so that's kind of the end of the overall presentation. I'd like to thank you. So we've got a couple of questions which have been popped in, but if you have any more, please feel free to drop them into the question and answer box. So one of the questions was, where do you see the new 802.11ax, which is the new wireless standard, in the OT space? So yeah, great question. It's desperately needed. I mean, while A.C, the current sort of top range wireless, is offering a lot of new feature and network design options, AX, I think, will just bring another level. It's still kind of like being argued about, going through, you know, final ratification and stuff. So some of the big IT vendors have already got compliant products. So they've built products that are to watch compliance of it, but there's no actual official final standard, unless they quickly did it over the Christmas break, which I don't know about. But you know, one of the key things it does is it then gives a bit more in the way of throughput. As you would expect, every new standard is throughput, but a lot of what it does is it just cleans up the way that wireless works. So the easiest way I could probably describe it is, over the years, starting with like 802.11, which was like the first wireless standard, we've had A, B, G, N, you know, and all the other ones. Each one added more features, gave more options, you know, faster throughputs, but new feature sets and everything else. But you know, they were all kind of bolting on to, you know, what was already existing, and it kind of resulted in 11 AC, which we've got now, which works great. But what AX did, they kind of sat down and went, right, okay, let's really refine this. So they looked at each feature in turn and they optimized it. They gave it a refresh. They've kind of sat down and gone, what's the best way of implementing this with everything? So AX is almost like a let's get rid of all of the old clutter that's kind of sitting in all the code and the way that things are working in AC. Let's optimize it all. Let's get it all working as good as we can. We'll throw in a bit more throughput, as with everything. But a lot of the throughput advantages come from the cleaning up of, how the existing standards are working. If there's a real interest in going through, where these wireless standards kind of sit, I'm happy to, put together another webinar to run through in more detail, just where wireless is, especially on the WoMaster product set. But yeah, it's something that will be needed. It's a great new technology, but for that OT infrastructure, I probably wouldn't be saying rush out and buy a lot of AX kit, because one of the fundamental things is not many end devices actually can use it. So I think I think just before Christmas, there was only like one mobile phone that was able to actually use the new AX standard. So you can go out and buy all of these brand new amazing access points, enhance your existing, networks and connections, but you wouldn't get the full benefit unless you get the absolute latest phones, laptops, and all this sort of stuff. And I think that's probably one of the key features which, thinking about it, can also be derived from the IT space, is the fact that a lot of times people will go out and they'll buy an absolute brand new state-of-the-art wireless access point, and they'll be connecting it to their very old laptop. And then they'll wonder why there isn't any performance increase, or vice versa. I've actually spoken with he was the director of the company. He went out and he bought all new laptops for his office, for everyone who worked in the office. They were, latest ones, super fast. And then he sat there and he had all the same problems of when they all wanted to jump on the wireless, it wouldn't work well, it was blotchy, kept dropping out. And I asked him, so did you upgrade all your wireless infrastructure? Just because your laptops can now run at, 5 gig, did you upgrade your wireless infrastructure? And he was like, well, no, we just left it what it was. Turned out, we had a quick look, he was running on like N wireless networks. So he's gone out and spent thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on latest laptops and phones and everything for, the latest speeds, and he completely forgot to upgrade his infrastructure. So he wasn't seeing any benefits. After that, he had to save up a bit because he had blown all his budgets. But the next thing on his budget was then new wireless infrastructure to actually benefit from all of the new technology. And I think that is something that also is spanning into the OT space as well. There are more and more OT devices coming in which are wireless enabled, LTE, all this sort of stuff. But we've got to make sure that all of the network is thought about and able to see the enhanced benefits rather than just one end. And luckily, WoMaster has a solution that can kind of go from the very end to the very core. So yeah, that's where I probably see about that one. If I don't see any other questions. So what I'd like to do is just thank everybody. If you have any other questions, then please feel free to drop me an email. I've just suddenly realized I've done the absolute cardinal sin of doing my presentation without putting my email address on it. Oh man, such a rookie mistake. So apologies, there it is. Quick bit of typing later. So please feel free to drop me a line, give me a call into the office, and I'll be happy to have a discussion around any applications you've got, what WoMaster is doing. I will be hosting some more webinars coming forward, so depending on the feedback from this one, I'll be joining up with the rest of the guys in the office, and we'll map out some new quality webinars on some topics that are of interest to you. But in the meantime, thank you very much. This is recorded, so if you do want to have a copy of this, please let me know, or I'm sure our marketing team will be pushing out copies of the recording, posting it online on social media and stuff like that. So, as for the first one that I've done, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.